don't know me, my name is Janie Thompson, and I am the president of the AFP Colorado Board. If you're unfamiliar with AFP, we are the Association of Fundraising Professionals. We work really hard to provide educational opportunities for our members, similar to this one, to advance philanthropy and advance the fundraising profession. So to those of you that are members, thank you for joining us. If you are not a member, you can visit our website, afpcc.org, to learn more. And with that, I will introduce our speakers and presenters today. First, we have Matt Wasserman with MPW Strategies. He should be very familiar to you. And then we also have Melisa Baldwin from the University of Colorado, Denver. And I will turn it over to both of them to talk about fundraising in the coronavirus era. So thank you both.
Great. Thank you so much, Janie. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for everybody for being here. Thank you, Melisa, for being our guest today. It's Friday of a long weekend. So, thanks for taking the time to be with us. So just, as we start, a little housekeeping rules, please use that Q&A feature for questions and comments. We want to hear from you. Want to hear what you're doing and just hear comments from what Melissa's saying and things resonate and they connect with you or you have other ideas. Please give us a comment. Any questions, use that Q&A feature. And then also in that Q&A feature, use that thumbs up. If you like a question, hit that thumbs up button and that'll help rise to the top. And then John can curate the questions for the second half of our webinar session. And this is being recorded. So you'll have the opportunity to access the recording. We'll get that out either Monday or Tuesday to all our attendees. And also, we're still doing this from home. It's still COVID era. There still could be issues. I just got a nice pop-up on my computer that said unstable internet. So I hope that gets better. And, again, there could be a lot of noise in the background and everything like that. And we'll just, blame that on Carol Baskin. So, I don't know, maybe is that an old joke? That might be like 2 months old. That's probably like 2 years in COVID time.
I think it still holds. I think you're
all right. Okay, good. I just got through the show, so I'm a little behind. All right. So Melisa, great to see you, and thanks so much for being on today. We really appreciate it. It's an honor to have you. So I just would love to hear what you're doing, to care for yourself these days and hang in there. We're in month 2 of the crisis.
Sure, Matt. Thank you. And it's my privilege to be here today. I really appreciate this opportunity that John and Matt and Janie have provided for me to just talk to fellow colleagues. So what I'm doing is really, you try to do your best every day, right? And self-care is a big part of that. Previous to COVID, I was very much in the gym on a regular basis. Like that was my routine, and COVID took that out immediately, right? So no gym. So I have changed my workout routine and I'm now running a lot, which is my least favorite thing in the world to do, quite honestly, but it has become something that I look forward to every day. So it's a new habit that I've developed that I'm really enjoying. The other things that I'm doing is really staying in touch with family and friends, on the weekends, making that a priority, making Zoom fun in that way because I use Zoom so much for business. So it's kind of nice to have the weekends to use it for fun and for entertainment. And I think in some ways it makes it easier to use Zoom during the week, right? To know that I have that to look forward to on the weekends. I like to read, so I do that a lot. I watch some really interesting TV shows, so I can understand the Carol Baskin comment. So definitely, into that. And I think really staying in touch, quite honestly, with my team. We've been meeting probably more than we normally do, right? But I find us sharing this journey together really inspirational. And I take a lot of inspiration from how they're handling this. I don't have small children at home. I don't have a lot of the things that they're struggling with every day. And so it helps put in perspective, what I feel like I'm going through myself. But self-care is a must. There is something to be said about putting that mask on before you tell the person next to you to put that mask on and help them. So it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it sounds like you're doing a lot, and, the exercise running's great to get outdoors. That's good for you. Yeah, we're just taking a lot of long walks and stuff with the dogs,
Yeah.
staying outside, and then good for you for finding entertaining, fun way to use Zoom
Yeah.
outside of the work life.
Right.
I guess it makes it, a lot more enjoyable. So,
Right.
so I'm gonna move the slide. So tell us, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And I want to hear about your background, Melisa.
Sure.
Incredibly accomplished in fundraising in the higher ed advancement space, and then we'd love to hear about CU Denver. If you can tell our audience about what's going. I mean, it is a crazy time wild time in higher ed. A lot of challenges out there. So.
It is a wild time in higher ed. So I'll start with myself first. So, gosh, I think the bio that you guys put up, it made me feel good, but I need to update the number of years. It's almost 20 years now. And so I need to own that and be really, really proud of that. I've been in fundraising for almost 20 years now, and most of my experience has been in higher ed. Previous to this position at CU Denver, I've had the opportunity to work at some fantastic universities that include the University of Florida and Georgia Tech and Kennesaw State. So prior to taking this position, I had spent my entire career in the southeastern part of the United States. I was really privileged to be recruited and for this position, and I joined the CU Denver team. It'll be 2 years in August, so this coming August. So my husband and I have been here for almost 2 years now, and CU Denver is, to me, for my career and what I am very, very passionate about, which is education making such a difference in people's lives, and as a way to really look to a way to create economic mobility, social mobility, all of those things. CU Denver, being an urban research institution, marries my passion for a mission with also my passion around how research can change the world and being around those types of creative individuals all the time. And so CU Denver marries both of those passions for me. We just graduated this past Saturday, our second largest graduating class in CU Denver history. 2,000 students graduated last Saturday. And, to think about when you look at the demographics of CU Denver, we are highly diverse on campus, over 50%. We have right at 50%, if not more, first generation students. So to think about not only that student making a difference in their own personal trajectory, but what they're doing for their families and how that looks and feels forevermore, just because they walked across that stage and worked so hard to get there. It's inspiring every time I think about it. And so, and you marry that with the incredible staff and faculty at CU Denver, who are so creative and innovative and really doing very traditional research, but doing very non-traditional research because of our location, because of our community connections, because of our passion around the community that we serve. It's an honor every day. It is not easy every day. I mean, none of this is easy, especially right now, but it is always an honor and a privilege. And I've had the opportunity to serve for Chancellor Harrell for 2 years now. This is a very mixed time at CU Denver, because not only are we going through a pandemic, but we're going through a chancellor transition. And we're so happy for Chancellor Harrell and her family, and really know that what she has established and the foundation that she has laid in front of us is just going to help Dr. Marks, who will be joining us in July, just help us continue to grow and move forward in some really fabulous ways. So it's a challenging time, but it's an exciting time, and there's no place I'd rather be than CU Denver. I really love it there.
Excellent. That's great. Thanks for that background on yourself and CU Denver. It is a special place. I'm biased. I'm an alum, former employee. It's incredible work being done there, research, and then the opportunity it provides our community. It's fantastic. So let's jump into questions. And
Okay.
I just want to remind everybody to, if you have any questions, use that Q&A feature. We can't do too much in the tech space and in troubleshooting tech. We'll try, but we got a lot of people on the webinar, so it's tough. So I apologize, but it is being recorded. So a reminder that we're recording this, so you'll have access to it by Tuesday probably. We'll send it out to all the participants. And just questions and comments. Keep them coming. We want to hear from you. We take these as a participatory endeavor, and its audience input is crucial for these. And so we really, let's ideate and collaborate on these things. All right, so if I can get my computer working, there we go. So Melisa, it was late February, early March, I guess, and the economy was zooming, and I imagine things looked pretty good, and then this virus hit, and and we got, slowly got locked down and home quarantine, and the stock market fell, and all these things started happening. So what did you do? Tell us what you did when everything first started taking place. It's kind of crisis management.
Yeah, as you said, gosh, I was reflecting on this last night, Matt, when I was thinking about our talk today. And, I had just come home from a fabulous trip visiting my mom for my birthday and being with my family. And like you said, everything was just really rocking along. And, we were hearing it in the news. And of course, because of our relationship with Anschutz, we were hearing in our leadership meetings, this alarm was sounding, right? And we were going to have to do something very quickly. And as with everyone, our first priority was keeping, ourselves and our staff safe, right? I mean, that was the first priority, is like, how do we quickly move? And it was very quickly when it happened. It feels like it was overnight almost. How do we move from having a regular in the office kind of routine to not working from home, but being forced to be at home, right? And then working through a pandemic. So it wasn't this normal work at home situation. So I knew very quickly that I have this amazing team of professionals that I'm surrounded with. And we're very bonded around the mission of what we're achieving. So that part, that was not my first thought. My first thought was safety. How do I help keep everyone calm when none of us know anything? And that's a really big responsibility as a leader that, I just had to face. I didn't even have time to think about it. I just had to react. So the first thing we did was come together and create 90-day plans within our overarching strategic goals and initiatives. And we said, we're not frontline like emergency people who are dealing with patients and all of those kinds of things that are so important. But we are so important to what's happening because we have these relationships with these individuals who have relationships with our university that we care about and we want to check on. So, and we also have an obligation to help these students get across the stage, right? Because it wasn't just us that it was going home, it was the whole university that was going on home. And our faculty, it's just incredible what our faculty did to turn on a dime and put the curriculum online to get that where students can have that opportunity to complete and continue to move through. And so we took our responsibility very seriously of, okay, COVID's gonna change so many things, but it's also gonna present opportunities. So even though this is a really scary time, let's start looking for the opportunities and the gifts, if you will, within this challenging moment. And let's start focusing on how we can help in the immediate to continue to make sure that our faculty and staff and students that we serve have what they need, but also our long-term vision. And so our 90-day plans were very important because they helped guide us through, I think, that first 45 days that was really challenging. And it gave us a new focus and purpose, if you will. It kind of reinvigorated where we were already focused, but we immediately started pivoting and said, where are the opportunities? Where are some of the new funding opportunities? How can we reach out to our constituencies and check on them and make sure they're okay? And just listen and see what they need. So that was the first reaction. That was absolutely the first reaction. I always think that, if you have a plan, it doesn't have to be a perfect plan. It can be something that can evolve and pivot, but just having a playbook, a plan, just gives a level of comfort for everyone. And so that's where we headed immediately as a group.
Great. Yeah, 90-day plans, so critical. We've heard that before. And, keeping it flexible because times were uncertain. They are now. They were really uncertain 2 months ago. And, just to think about, that's great that you reached out to your community, you connected, you looked for those funding opportunities, but so much, for you to juggle. So
yeah,
well done, getting ahead of that and jumping right in. I mean, I think that's the other thing. It sounds like, it's really tough, but, you stepped right in and said, okay, we got to keep things moving and do the best we can. And let's just form a plan around that.
Well, that's it. And, really lucky in that I have this, like I said, I always have to give credit back to the people that work with me on my team. They were so open to saying, yes, that's exactly what we need to do. That's exactly where we want to head. And very quickly came together with these really creative ways to work with our community and to work with each other. And so once again, when you ask me what I'm doing for myself, I mean, that was so inspirational to me because, as a leader, you have the responsibility to encourage people to stay focused and to lead them in a direction that we all agree upon and we feel very good about. But, it was a scary time as a leader. I mean, it's a dark moment when you face something for the first time. And, so it was a moment to say, okay, am I going to stay in a victim space or am I going to get above the line is what we talk about in our office. Am I going to get above the line and be a creator? And am I going to utilize this opportunity to say, yes, this really is awful, but how can we continue to move forward our mission and what we all so strongly believe in?
Great. Love it. Get above the line, folks. Be a creator. Good. So then the roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
So you got, how did things evolve? You're 2 months in, 1 month in, 2 months in, things are changing. It's stay at home is going to be longer. All things are evolving out there. And especially in your space in higher ed and what that school year could look like. Right.
So about 45 days in, and we didn't talk about it in those terms necessarily, but just kind of feeling through these first 90 days, about 45 days in, I began to realize, and I know the team did as well, that this wasn't just going to be a 90-day and we were going to be back in the office and things were going to be normal and we were going to be able to just move forward. And so we began talking about it and now we're more formally talking about it. We're closer to 60 days into our plan right now about how do we take these short-term plans and look through, we call it the COVID lens, right? And see how that's going to impact the rest of our year. Next year, and what does that look like? And so now the 90-day plan has become a longer term plan, right? We're still very focused on, in our office, we talk about big ideas, right? And transformational giving and philanthropic impact, all the things that I'm sure many of people on the phone can relate to and on this webinar can relate to. But we also understand that we can make some pretty serious impacts right now that are based upon our student population, right? And what I mean by that is a lot of our student population now is unemployed, right? And a lot of our student population did not even have computers at home that they could utilize. So those plans are now evolving into longer strategic initiatives that are going to be married to some of our transformational big vision ideas and become a longer term focus, because we are recognizing that this is a long-term issue right now. And even when COVID is done and we have a vaccine, and I know that that's going to happen, I think that this was a moment and for us to reflect and say, now we need to be very cognizant that life has changed, and we can't say that we're always going to have the opportunity to have in-person meetings. We can't always say we're always going to have opportunities to have in-person events. So what does the both and look like? What does it look like to be in a world where you might have alumni who never step on your campus, but complete their degrees and never have a campus interaction? What does it look like to have an event or an opportunity where some people are comfortable being in person, but others aren't? So now our 90-day plans are coming and changing into what I call those both and plans, right? How do we do our job in a virtual space and be very, very comfortable with that? And continue to take those in-person opportunities, but not take for granted ever again that we're always going to have those in-person opportunities. So I would say that's the stage we're at right now, right? What does that look like? And what are not only some of the short-term strategies, but now let's look at our strategic initiatives, our objectives, work with our partners, internal to the organization and external to the organization, our important group that's supporting us and being so generous. And how do we come up with plans that fit our new world and that can serve all of our constituents in a really robust way?
That's terrific. That's great. Yeah. And I mean, it's how you pivoted from, to the student, I mean, it's like student aid, it's assistance that, of course, existed at CU Denver, I'm sure, to some extent, but especially, the economy is roaring. People, there's a lot of jobs out there here in Denver and downtown Denver, especially. I know there's people in need, but now that's a tremendous shift with the closure of restaurants and services and all these places that employed students. So to then shift for a long-term to that fund is, there must be such a need.
There's a huge need, and it's really weird because as professionals, many of us, especially in higher ed, are always trained to think about impact and not use that word need, but that's a reality, and I think that is one of those things we need to embrace. Yes, we are trying to make impact, but we need to be very cognizant that there is need, and we need to look at it in a very specific way of how we can continue to not only help our students, but support our faculty, support our staff with money that can be budget relieving, with money that, for example, I don't know how many of you on this call know, but yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, all the days run together, I'm not gonna lie, that the University of Colorado Denver announced their furlough program, right? And so we were having a conversation yesterday after a town hall meeting and talking about, okay, well, what does that, grants and contracts and soft money, and how is that gonna play? And are those individuals gonna continue to be supported? There's so many unknowns right now, right? The federal relief is definitely helpful, but it's not the end all be all to solve a lot of the economic challenges that we face, not only as a university, but every constituent that we serve in some form or fashion is facing right now. And so where do the tactics come in underneath our strategy that can really help move that needle forward. It's that balance of short-term, long-term, right? Money to live on, money to grow on is what I talk about all the time. And you can't grow unless you have that money to live on, right? So we have to look at our activity from a strategy point through a different lens. But what doesn't change is the basics of what we do every day, which is provide amazing service, provide amazing care, listen to our donors, help them connect with their passions. That's the piece that doesn't change. But being very close to our internal constituents and understanding where the impact and need is, we're taking a new and fresh look at that.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's money to live on, money to grow on.
Yeah.
Statement. So folks, let's see your questions. What questions and comments you have for Melisa, whether it's, related to fundraising in your organization and how you can move your organization ahead during these times, or higher ed and what's taking place in the higher ed space. So anything you have, let's hear some questions. Don't be shy. Use that Q&A feature. So let's talk about goals, Melisa. Pandemic breaks, economy falls. You're not going to reaching those goals is different. I'm sure you had to change some things. So overall, how'd you change goals? And then also with your team, what that goal setting look like?
Sure. So we have a process at the University of Colorado on all our campuses called bottom-up goal setting. And so it's a really great goal setting process because what we do is we marry what I call the science with the art of fundraising together, to put it through that lens, right? Here's what the data says. Here's what I'm hearing from my academic partners, and then here's what I'm hearing from my prospect base. And so I think it's a beautiful way to marry the art and the science. We quickly pivoted, and this was really helpful to the team. We changed some of the metrics immediately. We gave a lot more credit and actually created new within our system, new ways to capture Zoom and phone and movement in that way, because the face-to-face was no longer, right? So we also quickly pivoted towards stewardship goals, right? Right now, our job is to be checking on our constituency, listening to their needs, adjusting any pledge payment schedules, telling them not to worry about it, telling them that we understood where they're finding themselves at right now. And so we made those adjustments right away. And I think that helped. It helped take some of the anxiety away, and we're all human and we experience it. And Matt, you said this to me, and it was really profound to hear a fellow colleague say it out loud. We as fundraisers, anxiety is like part of our makeup, right? That's like part of our DNA makeup, right? It's one of those things that makes us really good at our job. And it's also one of those things that we're always fighting against to try and keep in control. And so I think being able to change the metrics to say right now, contact goals is what's important. Being there for your constituency is what's important. Listening to where they're at very intently, and we're going to recognize your great work by changing the metrics and moving in that direction. But I also, we have to look at our bottom line, right? And it's to raise money. So that goes back to the gifts. Where are some of the new opportunities that were not there pre-COVID, right? And they're out there. And so how do we find those opportunities, and how do we lean into those opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's great. I mean, here time and time, just staying in front of the donors and the people that are most important to you, and just having conversations with them, staying connected. So to put that in the goals, as a stewardship, I think is very effective. And opportunities are so key right now. The opportunities do exist, and I think there's a lot of people that want to give back right now. They want to help out. They're searching to help out, and they're probably within your organization, and they belong. They feel that sense of belonging. I say time again, they feel a sense of belonging to your organization, and find that opportunity that they can make an impact.
Well, that's it. And I think that, you know, Matt, we got a solicitation out. We had been home maybe 72 hours and our first solicitation went out for our students. Like, we didn't hesitate, you know, and people have different opinions about that. And I completely respect that. I really do. And I understand that you have to know your group, you have to know your audience, all of those things. But at the heart, I'm a fundraiser, right? And so my immediate reaction was, okay, how can I support these wonderful people who support us, right? And listen to them, but how can I keep doing my job? And that is to raise money. And so to be bold and to not be afraid was one of the first barriers that we pushed through, and we got that solicitation out right away, and people responded. They were so excited to have a way to help out. And maybe they couldn't do it in ways like they've done it before or at the same rate, but it felt good to them to have something to help with, because this could make us all feel so helpless if we allow it, right? And so it gave them something to focus on.
Definitely. That's such a good point. So our last question here. So, you know, just overall, how are you getting things done? You know, right now you've built a 90-day plan, you built, you know, looking at the short-term, the long-term planning. How do you continue to move forward and execute? And, you know, as we said, it's uncertain. We're fundraisers. We get anxious on our goals and everything.
Right. Yeah. It's a normal part of our world. It helps us tick, you know. So what we're doing, first of all, we kept a lot of our standard meetings in place because I think it was important to show consistency, even in this new space, right? Consistency and a rhythm to your life just makes you feel better, right? And it goes back to that 90-day plan, right? Having something that you can follow. You know, but we've also added in a lot of other, and I've purposely added in a lot of other optional meetings. Right. So, for example, when we had the town hall around budget, every time we've had a town hall, I've had a call immediately afterwards with the team, right, to ask more questions, to be more open. We're actually using Slack as kind of our check-in. So every morning before 9 o'clock, everybody checks in just to say, I'm okay, and good morning, and here's what's going on. So we have embraced a lot of the virtual tools in our toolbox. We had already, prior to COVID, had been experimenting with some new virtual products to engage our constituency. And so we've moved those timelines up really fast, and we're launching those products. Instead of next year, we're launching those interactions this year. And that goes from everything from providing the opportunity for donors to have their own stewardship page and website that they can launch into, to having virtual coffees and conversations with our alumni. We're going to have our first virtual alumni awards in June, right? And so it's embracing technology. So that is one thing that's keeping us moving. And now it's becoming comfortable and creating new relationships over the phone and over Zoom, right? So it's not the cold call to get the appointment anymore. The cold call is the appointment, right? So we're going to try something called Calendly. I never say it right.
Tool. Yeah. I can't pronounce it, but it is a good tool.
But it's a great tool.
Yeah.
And so to give people the chance to opt in, as well as us being proactive, calling out, to opt in to engage with us. So we're trying to create more of that two-line stream or that two-way stream with our prospects and donors. We are over communicating in a lot of ways with our advisory boards, right? So I staff the Chancellor's Development Committee, and I am sending out more communications than ever right now, just to keep them in touch and keep them up to date, not only on what's happening in the advancement space, but what's happening across campus, right? We are also looking for, okay, so even if we can have face-to-face appointments at some time again in the near future, how do we approach that? How do we ask someone how they're comfortable. So I believe in a couple of weeks, I'm having a special session with my team to kind of share my experience after 9/11, right? Now that was different. That was a hiccup. It was a moment. It was quick, but it is relatable to having something that's very traumatic and very challenging to work through. And so in that conversation, we're going to talk about how do you create relationship if you don't have one in this space, and create a space for co-creation with our donors and with our prospects and keep them engaged. So those are just some of the things that we're looking at. We also understand that we have this roadmap called our strategic plan, but the first signal of changing that roadmap was the 90-day plan, right? So we're going to continue to make sure that that strategic plan is front of mind all the time, and we're going to be okay to be graceful and nimble and change it, right? And so I think we joke a lot that we're #resilience. It's one of the values in our office, and resiliency is the key to life anyway. But I think especially as a frontline fundraiser right now, or as a leader in this space, being willing to pivot quickly, embrace change quickly, is a muscle that we need to be practicing at all times.
Yeah, that's great. What a great point. I mean, that resiliency and building up your resilience is so important, especially during these times to get through. I love the way that, you're connecting with donors and creating that partnership with donors, allowing them to opt in, connect with you, and then also kind of that permission for a meeting or not to meet. What do you do next? Can we meet? Is that okay with you? Those are things we really have to think about in this new reality. I mean, that's a real big part of it.
Well, that's it. And it's not only, as a leader, it's not only the donors, right? It's how comfortable is my team and the people that I'm serving on the team. How comfortable are they? And my willingness to be flexible with that as well, I think is really important. I have some people who might be very comfortable with having a face-to-face appointment and a social distance space, but I have others who, for very good reasons, are not going to be comfortable for that at all, if ever. And so how do I, as a leader, provide the grace in the space to say, I know you're still doing such a great job, and so let me walk through this with you and figure out what it looks for you and your prospect pool, right? Yeah. And so once again, it's that both and, right? How do we do it? And not everything's going to be perfect, and understanding that there's going to be challenges along the way, and understanding and being okay that we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Because when you make mistakes, that is when you grow, right? You don't grow when you're not being challenged. I know that for sure now in my life, right? And if you can embrace that, it's a really beautiful space to be, because you're honing skills that are going to play out for the rest of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Don't be afraid to make mistakes in this in this world, for sure. There's so much pressure not to make a mistake.
All the time.
That's great. We've got a lot of questions coming up, and so I'm going to turn it over, stop my share and turn it over to John, see what questions we have here. So there you are. Welcome.
I am. Well, we'll start out of the gate with Gretchen's question, which is, it's always been difficult to, how do you log what is considered a meaningful contact? Nowadays, that's a real big question. So Melissa, do you want to take a stab at it?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it, and then I'll be curious about what Matt has to say about this, and you as well, John. It's how do you log a meaningful contact? I think that it's still, to me, the same parameters. Are you moving forward that relationship? I mean, I think that's just a basic and a classic. So, there are iterations around that and what that looks like. But if you have a meaningful conversation, or if you feel like even a stewardship conversation can be a meaningful contact if you're moving that relationship forward. And so I think, what I would say to Gretchen is to even write that down, right, on a piece of paper. Did I move this relationship forward? And to me, being really clear on that answer to that question in yourself and as a professional, that's going to tell you off the bat if it was a meaningful contact or not.
Matt, you want to take a stab?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a move. It's moving that person along, and we all have either some type of cycle of move of taking donors through a cycle, and they may look different organization to organization, but they're pretty much the same. You're discovering their interest and their passion and how they want to be involved in your organization, and then moving them, building that relationship, deepening that relationship, and moving it towards a gift, or after the gift, stewardship. So I completely agree. It's a move. I think in this day and age, it's also a move out. People might not be ready or comfortable to give. And so that disqualification, and as we know in fundraising, disqualification doesn't mean we're done. They're gone. It's just, we're going to put that person aside for now. And keep, go back to our portfolio and dig a little deeper, and then keep that person informed and engaged until they are ready. So, yeah.
I'll just add one other point. I agree completely what you said, Melissa. Just, say to yourself, did I move that relationship forward? Maybe you didn't. That's okay. And certainly what Matt said is just as important. This person's not, we're not their high priority. That's okay. The only thing I'll add to it is, and I've shared this story with a lot of clients, it's a nice anecdotal piece to remember, is that when I first started out in development, I had a boss that said, John, don't use email. It's exotic, it's new. And so what you said earlier, Melissa, about how we capture this interaction is important. And so I'm pretty ambivalent about how you move that relationship forward. I think most organizations should be that way. If somebody, I've had people send me a meaningful text, I'm ready to move forward with that scholarship. So just, I wouldn't let management or leadership get too hung up on things like that. I'd much rather a development officer be moving that relationship forward in the way the donor wants, not the way the organization is set up to handle it. That's a key point.
I agree. That's it. There's always a healthy tension there, right? But I think that's solid advice. I think that if you stay focused on the relationship and let the other noise around you, then you're doing a great job.
Yeah. And by the way, that text gift I received was from a donor that was 78 years old. So again, don't make assumptions.
Right.
Let's get to Monica's question. Can you share a brief story about something that has been particularly inspirational to you since March? I think it'd be great, Melissa, if you could share something with everyone.
Sure. Gosh. Okay. And now, gosh, I'm, and my team knows this about me. So I'm going to get a little choked up here because you're asking me to share something that's really inspirational.
Well, that's great for content. Keep that up. Yeah.
Right. Right. It's, so we have student callers. We have a calling program still. I know lots of thoughts about calling programs in higher education as well, but we have a calling program, and we had students who were sitting right outside my office when all this hit, and sending them home meant they weren't going to get paid, right? And not sending them home meant they weren't going to be safe. So what do you do? So myself and my colleagues, my other Vice-Chancellor colleagues on the other campus, we met with our leadership and met with the call center group and said, look, we just want to pay these kids anyway. We want to send them home. We want them to be safe. And that's what's important to us. And we want to continue to pay them because we see this as scholarship for them, right? This is a way to continue to support their goals to graduation. And so everyone agreed on it. And one morning I woke up and there was this video, oh my gosh, in my email box. And it was all these student callers thanking us and just being so grateful that we were thoughtful enough to say, just because you can't do your job doesn't mean we're not going to do ours, because we're here to support you. And the gratitude in that video, and it, like I said, it makes me choked up because it, I don't get as much student interaction as I would like anymore due to my roles and responsibilities. And it just took me back to the core of our mission in a heartbeat. And it just inspired me to just keep going, because that's why I'm here. And that's why everybody on my team is here. So.
Great. This question is actually from Matt. Gabriel asks, how would you compare what CU's Denver is doing with what other nonprofits and higher education institutions are doing, Matt?
That's a good question. Very, I think very similar. I mean, on these webinars, we've heard, that shift to plan, you've got that year-long plan. Most higher ed and organizations, it's pretty stable. You set your plan. It's based on a lot of, previous data and everything like that and your goals. And when the crisis hit, a lot of, organizations shifted to that kind of, let's get to 90 days. Or 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. How do we do this? How do we move forward? With that also understanding that this might change. And the other side, that I've seen very similar is that kind of a shift to where the funding's needed. And we've worked with a lot of organizations that, maybe they're in a capital campaign. They were focused on some, specific programs. But when this crisis happened, it was all about the people being impacted. And where does your organization impact, can help people impacted by the crisis? And shifting the funding, that whether it's a school, a K-12 school, going to a family assistance fund, early childhood education, going to, family assistance or distance learning, or, going to scholarship or something like that. So there's many ways, and we're seeing, I'm seeing arts institutions, focusing on just helping people during this time. And that's really, that shift in funding. So I'm seeing some, a lot of similarities. I really like how CU Denver's looked at their goals now, especially, I'm a big goal guy, metric guy, but how, thinking about stewardship and our connection with donor and how we move to that. So, I think this is the organizations that are successful, and I'm really seeing it in CU Denver. They're making short-term planning, they're shifting how they raise money, and they're keeping in front of donors with constant connection. So, yeah. Okay.
I've got the last question here. I'm going to kick it off with an answer and then move over to Melissa and then Matt. But it encapsulates a lot of what this is all about, this webinar. What changes have taken place? So I'll start off by things I'm seeing with our clients and colleagues and so forth. What Melissa said earlier, a lot more bottom-up review. And I've been involved in institutions where they've kind of said it, but sometimes leadership says we need X dollars. I think now more than ever before, and this reminds me of 2008, when, I was in institutions where they said, well, John, is this, recession thing really happening? And it's like, yeah, it kind of is. I think bottom-up review was one change that's happening, that if you weren't doing that, you should be. Or you will be, because you need to get what's really happening with your donors, and generally your frontline fundraisers are going to know that. A lot of times leadership, and it's not their fault, no one's going to tell the leader of an organization no, but they will tell the fundraisers. So sometimes, that bottom review is the best change you can make. The other thing I would say is new tools, like Melissa said earlier, utilize Slack, utilize all the stuff that's available now, making things a lot more efficient. And then technology, if you're holding off moving into the digital world, if you're holding off doing this stuff, again, I'll reference Melissa, now is the time to accelerate that stuff, because A, you have no choice, but B, people are now more open to it that they weren't before. So Melissa, would you mind answering some of those questions?
Sure. And John, I totally align with all of the things you said. And so the only thing I will add to that is, and this is very specific to higher education, but it might be applicable across, right? Let's really, as a profession, understand what it means to have a virtual client, right? Let's really look at that and take a strong look at that and be open to being creative around that. Let's not do business as usual. Let's not take that approach. Let's turn it on its head, see where the opportunities are, and embrace this new space that we find ourselves in. And so I think that, to me, that's one of the biggest changes that I foresee in higher education. It's tradition is wonderful, and we can learn so much from best practice and staying connected to the core of what we all know, right? Great relationship development, respecting our constituency, being great listeners, which is one of our, should be at the core of who we are as fundraisers, making those connections. But let's push back our fear that our role as a professional is in-person contact, all right? That might not always be possible anymore. So let's take this moment to redefine ourselves and not fight against it. Let's embrace it, and let's Let's make sure that our metrics reflect that new enlightenment, if you will, that we've had because of this terrible crisis and because of this challenge. Let's continue to look for the gifts that we're being given to move our profession along. Let's be ahead of the curve. Let's not be catching up.
Well said. Yeah, definitely agree. Agree with that. And I mean, it's a great time to pivot, to change, to think about new ways to engage donors, new ways to build relationships, new ways to bring people into your organization, and create that fulfilling experience for them. So, it's technology, it's connection. There's so much out there that we can use and adapt and borrow from the private sector. And this is really, I think, a time to do that. And we talked about that a lot last week as well. So.
Great. Well, I think we do have time for one other question. So I'm going to go to, let's see, there's a question here from Amanda, just talking about a fiscal year, and many organizations are projecting steep declines. I think, Melissa, you talked about this earlier, with universities, schools, it's going to be built on enrollment. So there's going to be a lot of other nonprofits, other organizations, they're going to be dealing with this. What you're thinking about the different constituencies for next year's budget. So Chief Amanda references major donors versus smaller individuals. Yeah. How will you be messaging those people, I think?
Sure. With our major donors, of course, I think we've already started doing a lot of that, right? And probably with both groups, actually, as I think about the actions we've taken over the past 60 days, we are connecting with all of those groups. For our major donors, I think it's patience right now. I think it's a really empathetic ear. Some people are very well positioned to still give. What are DARs looking like? What are foundations looking like? What the tax changes because of COVID, right? And so where are the opportunities in that space? But overall, I think it just is back to, and this is best practice, right? Listening to those donors and those major donors. With the group that falls below whatever that major donor group is for your organization, I think it's continuing to stay in touch, right? Continuing to show them that the organization is moving forward. You are continuing to provide services. You are continuing to provide education, and that even a small donation makes a huge impact, right? So continuing, I think more so than ever, we have to look at all the levers that we have in front of us, and you can't ignore it. And that's the trick in a space that's kind of constantly changing, is how are you pivoting quickly enough with technology, with your metrics, with all of those things, to be rewarding those reactions and those actions that are going to continue to keep philanthropy flowing and moving and help make your organization sustainable on the philanthropic front.
Yeah. That's great. I completely agree. I mean, I think, one thing, in terms of major gifts, there are folks that are struggling, won't be able to do what they did previously, no question. But there are folks that are making quite a bit of money right now still and doing very well. And I think it's looking at those industries or where that person, has made their wealth. I think the CARES Act allows for some great opportunities for giving along, gift planning, especially, donor advised funds are one thing. There's a lot of pressure for people to give a lot more of their donor advised funds. So I would be really focusing on donor advised funds quite a bit from our community foundations and the private donor advised fund holders. So if you have those financial partners in Schwab or Fidelity, what have you. The other one was charitable gift annuities. I think the CARES Act allows for some real tax benefits in charitable gift annuities if you're able to do those, and you have that ability right through your organization, or look to one of our community foundations to help you store that charitable gift annuity. And then on the other side, tax deductions is 100. We don't want people giving for tax deductions, but they do, and it's 100% deductible right now. So there's some tax incentives, there is some money flowing, there's a lot of uncertainty, so that will hold up major gifts. Again, that middle and the bottom, stay in contact with them, stay in touch. We are seeing, people give the least are giving a lot of
Yeah.
places now, and they're really coming through and giving in ways that I haven't seen. We're running some micro campaigns with some clients right now, and we're seeing a lot of people that never gave or don't give a whole lot. You know, they're out there giving to make an impact. The last thing I'll say is that I read this really interesting report that was on the Chronicle of Philanthropy on giving during a financial crisis or a financial downturn or something like that, and that giving pops up when the market pops up. So when the market goes down, giving only goes down like 4%. That was in the Great Recession, and the market went down 50, 40, 50%. But the thing was that hockey stick growth in giving when things got better. And so maybe we fast forward a year and hopefully things are better. Keep in contact with those donors because they'll be ready to give and they'll be front and center.
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to wrap this up though with a fundraising tourism, which I absolutely love. And Matt and I heard this morning. We were talking to a new client, and she's a veteran fundraiser. And Karen and Matt and I were kind of comparing notes. And I love working with veteran fundraisers because it's just a good conversation. But she was getting the same reinforcement: is that don't make the decision for the donor.
Yeah.
And don't bring your own, fears or assumptions or whatnot. I think the highest form of respect you can give the donors are to give them that opportunity. And as long as you do it in the right way, and one of my truisms is always ask if they would consider a gift. There's a big difference between asking if they'll make a gift, which is fine, but I've always asked, the term, would you consider it? And that gives them that kind of space. So don't fall in that trap of assuming that everybody's in the same financial position. They may not be. And as good as research is, and as good as wealth screening, all that stuff, which helps, it's not going to tell you. The best research tool is always going to be, I used to say the face-to-face visit, but I think it can be just the genuine conversation, maybe the genuine text, I don't know. So thank you so much, Melisa, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
No, this was my privilege.
Matt,
Thank you.
I will go on, if you can go to the last slide. Before I pass it off to Janie, a couple of some housekeeping here. We are recording this. We'll probably get out on Tuesday because we're going to take Monday off. But we'll send out the recording on Tuesday. And so those that register.
Maybe Wednesday in that case.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see how Monday goes. But our next session is coming up, session 8 on June 12th. Same time, Spreading Hope with Kelly Duncan, president of Community First Foundation. So that'll be fun. The Community First Foundation has a huge impact, and Kelly's been involved in the Denver, Colorado community for a lot of years. Has been participated and led a lot of different initiatives throughout Colorado. So she'll be a great guest and a lot of fun. And I think she'll give us a lot of hope, some optimism. June 9th, we also have June 19th, I should say, session 9, June 19th. We have Impact of Philanthropy on the Colorado Community with David Miller. He's the CEO of Barton Institute, Barton Institute for Community Action. And he used to be the former president of Denver Foundation for, Matt, is it 20 plus years?
Yeah, I think, mid-90s.
So he'll have some great insight, and just a really stand-up person we'd love to have. And then finally, the third bit of housekeeping, Matt and I are really curious about what folks would like to see. We might take a little bit of a July hiatus, but give us your ideas. We've thought of something called a dolphin tank. I'll pitch that out there, where we might take a nonprofit or an institution and see what we can do to help them out. But anyway, any crazy idea, there's nothing too crazy. It's us, we love crazy. So just send it to info@mpwstrategies.com. We'd love to hear from you. And then we got a Facebook page as well, LinkedIn, or just call us. We don't mind. Janie, if I can pass it off to you, and thank you again, Melisa.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John. Before everyone kind of rounds out their week, I just wanted to make sure that people were aware of the next AFP coffee chat. And like Melisa was saying, I think if nothing else, it provides a really great space for us to come together as a community and lean on one another and feel supported. And I always feel so much better after I leave a coffee chat. So it definitely has my stamp of approval. But the next one is June 11th at 8 a.m. And it will be an online giving discussion with Tim Hachuriak. I hopefully I didn't butcher that name, from Next After. So you can join us. That will be a Zoom call, and that information will be provided on the AFP website later as we get closer to June 11th. So I don't think it's up quite yet, but we'll be circulating that out. So keep your eyes peeled for it. And thanks again to Matt and John and Melisa. this was really a really great conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Have a great long weekend. Enjoy yourselves.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Bye-bye.